When it comes to one of the biggest financial decisions of your life, is going it alone really the best option? I'm Terry Ryder, and the Property Playbook starts now. Welcome to the Property Playbook, presented by Hotspotting, where each episode we empower you with expert insights and trends to thrive in today's competitive property market. Now, could having a buyer's agent in your corner be the game changer that turns your property purchase into a winning investment? To discuss, joining me now is Chris Graham, Senior Property Advisor at Australian Hotspot Advocacy.
Thanks for having me, Terry.
You're welcome. Chris, can you briefly explain what a buyer's agent is, what it does, and why it's a good idea to have a buyer's agent as part of your team as a property investor rather than doing it yourself?
So the role of a buyer's agent, everyone knows what a selling agent does. They look after their vendor to try and get the best deal for them. A buyer's agent works exclusively with the buyer throughout the whole process, whether that's finding the suitable location to fit their budget, all the way to finding the suitable properties. We'll then start putting in offers. Once we have, say, an offer accepted, we'll look through the contracts, we'll organise building and pest inspections, make sure there's no red flags there, and then we'll also find property management so that the investor can start getting immediate rental income.
There's so much to do, isn't there? I think a lot of people, when they embark on property, and even people who've done it before, kind of aren't aware of just how much there is to be done.
Exactly. A lot of people go through and they don't know what they don't know. And there's a lot that they don't know.
Yeah, and the other thing that I find talking to investors and wannabe investors is that they're kind of overwhelmed by the fact that Australia's this enormous country, and the big question they can't answer themselves is, where in this vast nation do I find the property that suits my criteria?
Exactly.
I think that's probably one of the best reasons to have a buyer's agent.
Exactly. I think there's about 20,000 property markets in Australia between houses and units, so it's a lot to choose from.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a researcher and a writer about real estate for over 4 decades. I know probably everything I need to know about places to buy and how property investment works, but I always use a buyer's agent.
Exactly.
It's kind of, for me, it's a time saver, but I also like to have a sounding board, someone on my team that I can bounce ideas off, because I don't think I know everything, and it's good to have a second viewpoint.
That's it. It's a long process, it really is.
Yep. So can you share perhaps some success stories of how you've helped a client make a good decision, or perhaps even a client to avoid making a bad one?
Yeah, absolutely, and that is a big one right there. So I would like to think every client that we work with have a better outcome by using us or a buyer's agent rather than going at it trying to navigate the process themselves. But yeah, we do have, yeah, I'd definitely like to think that everyone working with us does have a better outcome by using us rather than trying to navigate the process themselves. Just last week we settled on a property, major regional city. I think we paid $615,000. This was actually an off-market property where the average investor wouldn't have that access to. $615,000 by settlement last week. It was revalued at $670,000. So there's made $55,000 on the way in. And we're also looking at about $650 a week rent. So
you're able to buy something for an investor client lower than the asking price, because the big complaint that investors around Australia, the ones trying to pile into those hot markets like Perth and regional Queensland, is they've got to pay more than the asking price with intense competition from other people. So what you're saying is you're able for this client to buy off market and actually buy below the asking price. A long way. So there's instant equity there for that client.
Absolutely, yeah. So even if that doesn't grow in the next 12 months, which we're hoping that it will, that's why we've selected its location, but even if it doesn't, they're a long way ahead, especially factoring in our fees and everything like that as well.
And what about helping people avoid making a clanger, a decision that may cost them, sometimes people spend their whole lives recovering from a bad property investment decision.
Exactly. To be honest, that's some of the biggest wins we have, is some of the deals that don't go through. If we find red flag in, say, building and pest or the contract itself, something like that, we're happy to walk away from that and not try to go through just to get a deal done.
I think it's an incredibly important point, because what I'm aware of with investors piling into some of these hot markets like Perth recently, people buying without due diligence because it's so competitive, and if you stop and do building and pest inspection and have contracts conditional on that, you're going to miss out. It's really important not to skip those steps.
Yeah, exactly, especially to try and win a deal in those hot markets, having to forgo some things like subject to finance, subject to building and pest. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So what are some of the credentials that people should look for when they're trying to select a buyer? How do you find a good one, and what should you look for in a buyer's agent?
Yep, absolutely. So first I'd be asking them if they invest themselves, if they've got a bit of a portfolio. If I'm having someone guide me through that process, I want to know they've been there, they've done that, they got money in the market as well. Another thing, I'd want them to be, say, a member of organisations such as PIPA or REIV, REIQ, all the acronyms, which sort of keep them to a higher standard. And it also shows that they're willing to upskill, they always want to learn, things like that.
I think it's really quite dangerous out there in the market for people looking for buyers. All you need to actually call yourself a buyer's agent is a pulse, let's face it. And there are so many people out there holding themselves out to be property experts when they don't really have a lot to offer. They don't have a lot of skin in the game, no real experience, either as an investor or as a buyer's agent. One of the things that I think is probably the best advice for people trying to find a good buyer's agent is seek advice from your friends. People have actually been through the process and have had a good experience. That's probably the best recommendation.
Yeah, and I do want to know that my buyer's agent is happy to walk away from a deal. I don't want them to try and sell every listing to me just to get a deal done. I want them to know it doesn't matter how long it takes. I want the right property in the right place at the right time. Don't just send me every listing and try to make a case for that. I want it to be the right one.
Yeah. So what about the cost? How much does it cost to use a buyer's agent, and how are those fees normally charged?
Yep, so there's two avenues that I know of. There's a flat rate model and there's also a commission model. So with a flat rate, which is the way we operate, doesn't matter if it's a $400,000 purchase or a $1.2 million purchase, we still get the same for doing the exact same work. And then with a commission model, to be honest, I don't really understand how they can do that, because the higher the sale price, the higher the agent is going to coop from that.
It doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't really align with saving the buyer money.
It makes sense for a selling agent because it gives them a motivation to get a higher price, but when you're engaging a buyer's agent and investor, you want a lower price.
Exactly,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I will mention on that, there is a bit of a red flag to look out for. If someone is acting as a buyer's agent and says that their service is free, then they've got a product to sell you. So they're getting a kickback from a developer or a builder, and they've got a product to sell you. So their service should never be free for a buyer's agent. You're paying them for their service and their experience.
Yeah, I know there's also some selling agencies that also have a buyer's agency arm. That doesn't seem to make sense to me.
No, exactly. It's a conflict of interest.
Absolutely, something for people to be aware of. But as I touched on earlier, there's so many online tools available, so many places you can go. Why can't people just do it themselves?
Yep, I mean, yeah, there is a lot available to everyone now, but you still really need to know where to look.
Yeah.
You might have an idea of what you can buy for your budget. You might see something for sale, but you might not know what that property's worth. And the one strategy that's very common, I don't recommend it, but what people offer is what the bank can give them. Is the bank's willing to lend them, and that's their strategy.
Just finally, Chris, you mentioned early in the conversation about off-market opportunities. What does that mean, and why is that an advantage for buyers using a buyer's agent?
Yeah, happy to. Yep. So off-market properties are just not listed on your major portals. So there could be a couple of reasons why the seller wants to do that. One is they want more of a discreet sale where they don't want, say, friends or family or their neighbours to know that they're putting their house up for sale, and also how much. And the other one, which is probably more common, which is the seller doesn't want to pay the marketing expenses. They can be quite costly to list on the major portals, so they'd rather use the selling agent's pool of potential buyers, which is usually buyers agents or some investors. They'd rather try to sell it that way.
Okay. That's the play for today. This is Ticker. We'll be right back.
You're watching Ticker. We'll have more in just a few minutes.